The woman standing behind the polished marble reception desk gave a smug smile. You own this hotel? Then prove it. The exhausted single father standing in front of her said nothing at first. He was holding his little girl against his shoulder. The child was 7 years old and burning with fever. His suitcase was damaged, his clothes were still wet from the rain, and his jacket looked like it had seen better days. Around them, wealthy guests in expensive clothes had begun watching. The hotel manager, Madison Reeves, leaned across the desk. "Sir, this is the Grand Belmont Hotel," she said. "People like you don't own places like this. They carry bags for the people who do." A few guests laughed. The man's grip tightened around his daughter. Then the little girl slowly opened her eyes. "Daddy, is this Mommy's hotel?" The entire lobby went quiet. That was the moment everyone realized they had made a terrible mistake. The man's name was Daniel Whitmore. 5 years earlier, Daniel had been the quiet force behind one of the most successful luxury hotel chains in the country. He avoided interviews. He stayed away from cameras. He never cared about being recognized. Daniel preferred to work behind the scenes. He built the company slowly, made careful investments, and allowed other people to stand in front of the cameras. Then everything changed. His wife, Claire Whitmore, died in a terrible car accident at the age of 38. After her death, Daniel disappeared from public life. News reports claimed that he had sold his businesses and walked away from the hotel industry. The employees at the Grand Belmont Hotel believed the hotel was now controlled by a distant board of directors, but that was not the truth. Daniel still owned the hotel, and tonight he had returned for a very different reason. He wasn't there to impress anyone. He wasn't there to demand special treatment. He wasn't even there simply to spend the night. He had come because he wanted to discover why guests had been complaining about the hotel. The Grand Belmont Hotel had once been known for warmth, respect, and excellent service. Now people were describing it as cold, arrogant, and unfriendly. Daniel wanted to know what had happened to the place he and Claire had built together. He arrived shortly before midnight with his daughter, Emma. Their flight had been delayed for 6 hours, their luggage had disappeared somewhere along the journey, and Emma had developed a high fever. A doctor at O'Hare International Airport had examined her and told Daniel that she needed warmth, rest, and clean air. So, Daniel carried his exhausted daughter into the hotel. He walked to the front desk and spoke calmly. "Good evening. I have a reservation under Whitmore." The receptionist, Caleb Foster, looked at Daniel's wet clothes and old backpack before even checking the computer. "We're fully booked," Caleb replied. Daniel looked at him. "You haven't checked yet." Caleb sighed as though Daniel was wasting his time. "Fine." He entered a few details into the computer. Then he looked up. "Now I've checked. We're fully booked." Daniel knew something was wrong. Before he could respond, Madison Reeves walked out from behind the reception area. She was wearing a bright yellow blazer and holding a tablet. "What seems to be the issue?" she asked. Daniel looked at her. "My daughter is sick. I made this reservation weeks ago." Madison slowly looked Daniel over from head to toe. "Sir, this is a luxury hotel. We can't simply allow anyone to come in from the street and expect a room." A few guests nearby laughed. Daniel tried to remain calm. He looked down at Emma. Her forehead was resting against his neck. "I am not asking for a free room. I am asking for the room I already paid for." Madison checked the computer. For a brief moment, her expression changed. The reservation was there. Presidential suite. Lifetime owner access. Name, Daniel Whitmore. Madison knew exactly who was standing in front of her, but instead of admitting the truth, she quickly closed the reservation screen. She had a secret to protect. She had secretly rented the owner's private suite to a celebrity influencer. The payment was $12,000 in cash, and Madison had kept the transaction off the hotel's official records. She looked at Daniel and smiled. "There is no reservation under that name." Daniel's voice became firmer. "Check again." Caleb gave a short laugh. Sir, you might have better luck at the Riverside Inn. They may have something available for your situation. Daniel stared at him. Then Emma moved slightly in his arms. Her eyes opened. Daddy, I'm cold. Those words changed everything for Daniel. He had spent years learning how to control his anger, but hearing his sick daughter say she was cold was different. He looked at Madison. At least let my daughter sit somewhere warm while I make a few calls. Madison immediately shook her head. The lounge is for guests. He looked at her in disbelief. She is 7 years old. Madison crossed her arms. This is a 5-star hotel. We have standards. The words made several people uncomfortable, but Madison didn't seem to notice. What she didn't know was that someone else had heard everything. A housekeeper named Nora Bennett had been standing nearby. Nora had worked at the Grand Belmont Hotel for 17 years. She had known Claire Whitmore personally. Nora remembered something Claire used to say whenever she walked through the hotel. Luxury means nothing if kindness disappears. Nora looked carefully at Daniel. Then she noticed the small silver bracelet around Emma's wrist. One word was engraved on it: Claire. Nora's face immediately changed. She knew who the little girl was. She knew who the man carrying her was. Nora hurried toward the desk. Miss Reeves, maybe we should help them. The child is sick. Madison turned toward her. Nora, go back to housekeeping. Nora hesitated. Madison's voice became colder. Unless you want tonight to be your last shift. Daniel noticed the exchange. He saw the fear on Nora's face. And suddenly, he understood that the problem at the Grand Belmont Hotel was bigger than rude employees. The staff were afraid. Before Daniel could ask anything, the hotel's main doors opened. A famous travel vlogger named Logan Pierce walked inside with 2 assistants and a camera crew. Madison's attitude changed instantly. Her cold expression disappeared. Mr. Pierce, welcome back to the Grand Belmont Hotel. Your suite is ready. Daniel slowly turned toward her. The suite? Madison froze. Logan smiled. Yeah, the owner's suite. He adjusted his sunglasses. Best view in the city. Madison always takes care of me. Daniel looked directly at Madison. You told me the hotel was fully booked. Madison lifted her chin. That suite is reserved for premium guests. Daniel remained calm. And what am I? Caleb muttered under his breath. A problem. The words were cruel, and everyone heard them. Emma began crying softly against Daniel's shoulder. That was enough. Daniel had stopped asking for explanations. He reached into his old backpack. Then he pulled out a black key card with a gold crest. He placed it on the marble counter. Madison's face suddenly became pale. Caleb stared at the card. What is that? Nora whispered from behind them. The founder's card. Madison quickly tried to recover. That could be fake. Daniel looked at Caleb. Swipe it. Madison immediately said no. Daniel's eyes remained fixed on her. Swipe it. The entire lobby watched. Caleb hesitated. Then he picked up the card and ran it through the reader. The computer screen changed. Access granted. Identity verified. Daniel Whitmore, majority owner. Nobody spoke. The camera crew stopped moving. The guests stared. Caleb slowly stepped away from the desk. Madison couldn't hide the shock on her face. Logan Pierce lowered his sunglasses. Wait, he owns the hotel? Daniel picked up the card. Yes. He didn't smile, he didn't brag, he didn't raise his voice. Instead, he turned toward Nora. Please take my daughter somewhere warm and quiet and call a doctor. Nora immediately nodded. Yes, Mr. Whitmore. She carefully took Emma from Daniel and wrapped another blanket around the child. As Nora carried Emma down the hallway, Madison rushed forward. Mr. Whitmore, I had no idea who you were. There must have been some kind of system error. Daniel turned toward her. You saw my reservation. Madison had no answer. She opened her mouth, then closed it. then tried again, but nothing came out. Emma looked back toward her father. "Daddy." That one word exposed how badly the staff had treated them. Daniel kissed his daughter's forehead before letting Nora take her down the hallway. Then he turned back toward the reception desk. "Open the admin log." Caleb looked nervous. "Sir, I don't have permission to access that." Daniel stepped forward. "I do." He walked behind the counter. Madison immediately tried to stop him. "Mr. Whitmore, this really isn't necessary." Daniel looked at her. "Move." His voice was quiet, but there was no room for argument. Madison stepped aside. Daniel logged into the hotel's administrative system. Within seconds, the records appeared. His expression became serious. The owner's private suite had been rented out 12 times in only 3 months. The records showed cash payments. Some guest complaints had been deleted. Several guests had been falsely told that no rooms were available. And then Daniel found something even worse, an employee termination report. Employee name, Nora Bennett. Reason, insubordination. Signed by Madison Reeves. Termination date, tomorrow morning. Daniel stared at the screen. Then he looked toward the hallway where Nora was sitting with Emma. He turned back toward Madison. "You were planning to fire the only person here who remembered what this hotel was supposed to be?" Madison became defensive. "She disobeyed management." Daniel shook his head. "No." He looked toward Nora. "She followed her conscience." Nora lowered her eyes as tears filled them. Then Logan Pierce's voice came from behind the camera. The camera was still recording. Madison suddenly noticed. "Turn that camera off." Logan smiled. "Absolutely not." He looked around the logie. "This is the best hotel review I've ever filmed." The guests began whispering among themselves. Madison realized that everyone had seen what happened. Then something unexpected happened. An elderly man sitting near the fireplace stood up. He had been quietly watching the entire situation. He wore a dark suit and carried himself with authority. Madison's face changed when she recognized him. "Mr. Callahan?" The man was Richard Callahan, chairman of the hotel board. He slowly walked toward Daniel. Then he spoke. "Your father asked me to watch this property while you were grieving." Daniel looked at him. Richard lowered his head. "I should have discovered this sooner." Daniel's expression hardened. "You knew there were complaints?" Richard nodded slowly. "I knew there were problems in the numbers. I didn't understand how bad the treatment had become." He looked around the grand lobby. The expensive lights, the marble floors, the fresh flowers, the wealthy guests. Everything looked perfect, but Daniel knew appearances meant nothing if the people inside the building had lost their compassion. He looked toward the hallway where Emma had been taken. Then he spoke. "My wife didn't build this place so people could feel small." The room became silent. "She built it so people could feel safe." Daniel's voice began to shake. For the first time that night, his emotions were visible. "The night Claire died, she was driving here because a guest had called for help." Everyone listened. She was a mother with 2 children. A storm had left them stranded, and Claire decided to come here herself. Daniel paused. "She always believed that no one should be turned away when they truly needed help." Nora covered her mouth. Several guests looked down. Even Caleb looked ashamed. Daniel turned toward Madison. "You denied my daughter a chair." Madison said nothing. "You judged me because of my clothes." Still nothing. "You lied about my reservation." He pointed toward the computer. "You used the owner's suite for your own cash deals." Madison's face tightened. "You deleted complaints." Her eyes moved toward the floor. "And you tried to fire the one employee who showed my daughter compassion." Madison finally spoke. "Mr. Whitmore, please." She stepped closer. "I worked very hard for this position." Daniel looked at her. His answer was simple. And tonight, you worked very hard to lose it. He turned toward Richard. Terminate Madison Reeves immediately. Richard nodded. Security will escort her out. Daniel continued. Freeze all of her illegal payment records. Send every illegal payment record to legal. I want the deleted complaints recovered and investigated. Madison's face collapsed. She realized there was nothing left to say. Daniel then looked toward Caleb. You laughed at a sick child. Caleb's voice trembled. I was only following her instructions. Daniel stared at him. Then you need to learn how to choose better leaders. Caleb lowered his head. Daniel looked at Richard again. Terminate him, too. Richard nodded. The two employees who had treated Daniel and Emma with disrespect were removed from the front desk. But Daniel wasn't finished. He looked toward the hallway where his daughter was receiving care. The Grand Belmont Hotel had been his and Claire's dream. It had nearly become something they would never recognize. That night, Daniel had returned to discover the truth, and now he was ready to rebuild the hotel around the one thing Claire had always believed mattered more than luxury.